I'll get another question.
Okay.
In Australia, and I know something about Australia, nothing about this country. In Australia, the law is carried out by the lawman.
Yeah.
And if you break the law, you'll point a bone.
Right.
You're dead within
We're talking about among the Aborigines now.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
point a bone in you, you're dead within 24 hours. I guess it's like voodoo. From your understanding of your culture, what is exactly going on?
What's going on when that happens? Okay. Because you find this in almost every culture in some degree or another. Here in Hawaii, this was the province of what was called the Ana, who was the black sorcerer. Okay? And a person who was reviled and despised in the society. At least by all the accounts that we have that the Hawaiians wrote. Okay? In order for that to have an effect, let me give you some of my African experience. Right? Because I spent 7 years in West Africa, and I was apprenticed to a West African shaman. And a part of my training took me, well, I lived for a while in this country called Dahomey, which is now called Benin, which is the home of voodoo, which is where all the voodoo in South America came from. Okay? And I was introduced to and got to know and learn from the sorcerers, who were the masters of this. Okay? What I learned was really interesting, because the master of this would use everything psychologically possible to influence the person. You talked about pointing the bone. Well, one of the typical things there was to nail a white rooster to the doorway. Not surprisingly, the white rooster was bad, the black rooster was good. But nailing a white rooster splayed out, you know. That was one thing. Boy, that was a message. You're under a curse. Burying something in a bit of juju, which is, there's all kinds of possibilities that they might use, but it just means a magical item, in a path that the person usually traveled, making sure that it was buried in such a way that he would notice it. Okay?
Inner tennis.
What's that?
It's inner tennis.
Inner, that's right. They had trained cats. And they would train cats to come that had these little juju gourds tied to them, so that that cat would come and enter the person's house so that they would know for sure that they're under a curse. They might have people telling them. Okay, now all this is happening in the context of society where this is strongly believed in. This is creating an expectation, a strong one, as much as possible. But here's what the surprising thing was that I learned. If none of that worked, they'd send an assassin. What they did not do was sit down for hours focusing on bad thoughts for that person. Because these guys were smart enough to know that's going to hurt me just as much, if not more, than them. They didn't do that. That's the image, you know, somebody standing over there with a little doll. No, they buy the doll, put pins all over it, make sure the other person saw it or found it or was sent to him or knew about it. He wouldn't pay any, and they'd probably have an apprentice do that anyway. They didn't spend their time focusing on evil thoughts because they knew that didn't work. Now, why would someone else be influenced sometimes? Because it's been done to Westerners. Why would there be an influence? That would only work if there were a guilt for anything strong enough that it could be amplified. Then it could have a similar effect. The moment you decide that it won't have an effect, the moment you decide that the person doesn't have the power to do that, no effect. In old Hawaii, there were lots of different beliefs. There were people who believed in and were afraid of the sorcerers. There were a lot of people who didn't, and particularly if they were part of a shamanic family. And so it would be like if a sorcerer came to this peasant's field, one who was in the shamanic family, and he said, "I curse your crops, may they wither and die." You just look at him calmly and say, "Well, I bless my crops, may they grow and prosper." Okay? That'd be it. Undone. A curse is only a set of words coming from somebody with an evil intention. That's all it is. Has less power than a good set of words with a good intention. Because people will resist subconsciously the bad stuff and accept the good stuff.
Will a plant resist it?
Sure. A plant will resist too much energy, but it also will represent the negative feelings or intention, the information that's transmitted.